Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. At this time, I'll call an open session. The work session meeting of the Arlington Independent School District Board of Trustees on January 29th at 7:38 p.m. I apologize for the delay this evening in coming out. The board intends to make one of its scheduled meetings each month a work session. This meeting is a work session. It's AISD's common practice not to include open forum items on work sessions. No action will be taken on discussion items. If any action or votes taken on these topics, they will appear on future agendas as action discussion. We will be taking a discussion action items tonight. Do we want to go off the regular one? Okay. There we go. We will start our meeting with the opening ceremony. Please join Mr. Tony Pompa in leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. At this time, would you please silence all cell phones, electronic devices, to avoid disruptions around you. And now, if you would, please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. First, we'll go to our first item, discussion action. Item A, capital recommendations from Capital Needs Steering Committee. Dr. Cavazos.
Thank you, President Hogg. And this evening, we'd like to bring before the board Capital Needs Steering Committee and their report. And so we're going to begin with just a little bit of background and framing, and then we'll be calling the committee up. And so, as you know, this is one portion, a very strong and significant portion of our Achieve Today, Excel Tomorrow strategic plan. And just as a reminder, the vision of the AISD is to be globally acknowledged as a premier school district. And we've set that as our vision for our school district. And our mission is to empower and engage all students to be contributing, responsible citizens, reaching their maximum potential through relevant, innovative, and rigorous learning experiences. And we've said often that relevant, innovative, and rigorous learning experiences really are the drivers to a lot of the things that we do in the interest of our students. And so tonight you'll see some of that reflection. Just as a reminder, our objectives of our bold strategic plan is that 100% of our students will graduate on time and excel at their school and career of choice, will reach their full academic potential, be actively involved in extracurricular and co-curricular activities, graduate as lifelong learners, and graduate with a commitment to their community. I think it's important to reflect on our vision, our mission, and our bold objectives as we proceed with tonight's discussion of our capital needs and the fine work that the committee has done. And so this portion of our presentation, or the presentation tonight, ties to Goal 1 of our strategic plan under Inspired Learners, under that pillar. And that AISD will be a high-performing, technology-rich school district with leading-edge learning experiences that promote engagement, creativity, critical thinking, and achievement. And the AISD will prepare our students to graduate to excel in higher ed or career of their choice. We'll be a leader in the education marketplace by providing world-class facilities while being fiscally responsible. And then the AISD will provide a safe and secure environment for our students. And so this evening we invite the co-chair to do, or maybe Cindy, to do the presentation to start us off with our capital needs. Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you, President Hogg, board members, Dr. Cavazos. We are going to hear from our committee co-chairs in just a moment, but we have spent a great deal of time with a number of individuals. They've dedicated a great deal of their personal time over the last 5 months to help us evaluate our needs and prioritize needs and get to the point we're at this evening. And so before we go any further, we want to recognize the ones who are here this evening, and I think we have a fair number of them here, but we've got their names shown on the screen, and we have certificates for them. So we'd like to acknowledge their efforts on our behalf and on behalf of all the students and citizens of this committee, because their work was significant and can have a very profound effect on this entire community for many decades to come. So with that, I'm going to call names, and they're in the order that you see up here. And so if they'll just step up here, and I don't know if you all want to come and acknowledge that.
Dr. Reich is the Community Engagement Chair to please come down.
First we have is Jeff Williams, one of our co-chairs. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. We have Chad Bates.
Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you very much. Fernando Benavides, principal at Sam Houston.
Thanks.
Sure. Becky Berry. She here this evening? Okay. Jennifer Boyle. Alicia Carberry. Justin Chopper. Mike Sinaddle. Suzanne Dangelmeyer. Pam Dawson. Jeannie DeKine. We had communication from several people that they were not going to be here this evening. Tara Gray. Micah Green. Ah, there's Micah. Hey, thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it. Russell Green. Andy Hagman, principal at Shackelford.
Thank you.
There you go, sir. John Hall, and he is one who communicated with us that he had a commitment this evening, so he will not be here. Shannon Hanrahan. John Hibbs. We have our board members. I'll pass yours to you in a minute. Randy Hendricks. Randy's here. Thank you very much,
You
sir.
bet. You
Appreciate
bet.
it. Suzanne Hudson. Jessica Levy. Ross Martinez. Ross, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Keisha Mays. Thank you very much. Yes. Steve McCullum. Delrena Wynn, one of our students. John Nolan. Andrew Peel. Steve Plamondon. Mr. Pompa, one of our board members. Dr. Reich. Served as our 3 board members served as ex officio members. Tammy Rogers. Tammy's the principal at Johns Elementary. Stephanie Roper. Sarah Spurrier. Jana Stutler. Kayla Weary. David Wilbanks. There you go, sir. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Trey Yelverton. I believe he had a commitment this evening as well. Jackie Johnson. There you go. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We had 2 other alternates, Ishmael Taher and Paula Womack. All right. Thank you very much. There's the down arrow key. You can,
Here. President Hogg,
Mr. Bates, before you start, please can we just all give a round of applause to that whole committee? Whether you agree or disagree with what's coming up as recommendations, I think no one can argue with the work this committee did. It's a truly an amazing committee, and one person in the audience is serving on that committee. He's one I've known for years, and I know he was pretty hard on the district before and coming in some items, and as he went through this and saw more and more, I think he realized what the public schools can really do, and I think that's what this committee does, is bring it up. So I thank you all for your hard work tonight.
thank you very much, President Hogg. Distinguished members of the board, Dr. Cavazos, I stand before you as one of the co-chairs, along with my co-chair Jeff Williams, to give you our recommendations on behalf of our committee. As you mentioned, President Hogg, this committee really was astounding in terms of the commitment levels that people gave. And I want to thank all of our committee members for their service. Literally, there's been thousands and thousands of man-hours put into the work and the recommendations that we're going to be presenting tonight. I'm very pleased to state that the recommendations that we're going to be presenting to you were unanimously approved by the committee. I think that's very noteworthy. It's not without a lot of discussion and debate, and certainly there's areas of this plan that were very well vetted over many, many hours and sometimes days and weeks. So it's my privilege to go through the facilities component of the recommendation tonight. And I would be remiss if I didn't put this additional screen up to acknowledge the other committee members that were acknowledged by Ms. Powell. I think before I go into the details, in addition to this being a unanimous recommendation, I think it's important that the board hear from the committee that we really delved into the financial components to make sure that we were being fiscally responsible in anything that we recommended to the board. And obviously, ultimately, your decision to move forward or not is in your hands. We respect that. But I think it's important to note that we did take into consideration the fiscal impact on our taxpayers as we as fellow taxpayers and citizens serving on the committee. The charge was not one that was faint at heart in terms of the commitment level that we're trying to do. As Dr. Cavazos has said, really having a premier school district was the goal, and that was the driving charge that you all gave to us, and we feel like that we are accomplishing that in a fiscally responsible manner. So in terms of new district-wide facilities, very excited about this particular one. One of the components would be to establish a career and technical center. Students would remain enrolled at their home campuses and probably in half-day increments come back and forth to attend the Career and Technical Center for different courses. Technical and trade courses would be included, and the committee recommends that this be located at the current Hutchinson site. In case there's any question about that, that site would be raised and we would emerge with a new Career and Technical Center in its place. We also recommend a Fine Arts Center. This would be a 2,500-seat performance hall and would also include some classroom and virtual learning capabilities, as well as an instrument repair facility with career and technical implications for our students. Not only could it save costs for repairing instruments, but it also could provide a career path for our students. I think this is indicative of the type of thought processes that the committee really put into this. The Career and Technical Center, as an example, could also serve as our IT center, and we could have career and technical classes with people actually performing, day-to-day operations on the equipment that the school district uses for its IT purposes. The next district-wide facility that's recommended is an athletics complex. This would be a athletic complex to be used by the entire district and would include an auditorium for swimming and diving. This particular recommendation includes a 50-meter pool, which would also be eligible for area swim meets and that sort of thing, and diving meets. Would have room for gymnastics, which is a real issue that we don't have in our district currently. It's not addressed properly. And we also don't have adequate wrestling facilities district-wide, and we're recommending all three of those be combined into a state-of-the-art athletics complex.
In our last work session with the board, you asked us to consider what we would need to really take a very successful agricultural science program and elevate it to the next level. And so we have included that in your recommendation. We'd also have a vet tech program included and a Texas State Floral Association curriculum certification program could also be included in that. In terms of new facilities, we're recommending 2 new elementary schools that would address some oversaturation issues within North Arlington, relieving some overcrowding in Ellis, Larson, and Sherrod. And in East Arlington, we were recommending that we use some extra space that we have at the Workman campus and put an elementary school at that location that would relieve Amos, Burton, Foster, Goodman, and Morton elementary schools. We also are recommending, and I'm very excited about this personally, 6 multi-purpose activity centers. And so people that are not familiar with the terminology, when we say activity center, this is not just an indoor football workout facility. It would be used for dance, for cheerleading, for band, soccer, basically any sport that may need an indoor workout facility and or fine arts and other extracurricular activities and groups as well. So it's going to be adaptable. I think the plan is, what's included here is about a 70-yard indoor facility. So it's sizable enough that you could have multiple components going on at one time. I know for bands, that are practicing out in August on 110 or 150 degree pavements, that could be a real relief for them. And again, so it's not just football. I want to make sure that that's why it's not an athletic center, it's an activity center. Another purpose of this is to relieve some of the overcrowding within the high schools. And so we would be able to repurpose some of those areas in the high school, as I'll go through here in a moment, and free up some space. Particularly, one of the studies really that we looked at was Arlington High overcrowding, and this would be a significant component to address those issues for Arlington High School students and parents. We also are recommending that we repurpose Corey and Rockmore elementary schools and establish a north and a south, if you will, elementary fine arts and dual language academic program. And these would be schools of choice and would be admission by application, multifaceted fine arts experience with comprehensive and vigorous instructional setting, dual language program where 50% of your instruction would be in English and 50% in another foreign language. Corey would be phased out for transition to academy. I think this is important. The committee did take into consideration, these things are not going to happen overnight, so parents and students shouldn't be concerned about being displaced from their existing locations. That's all been discussed at the committee level, and we have a plan in place that the administration could move forward with to phase those students into their different junior high feeder schools. Rockmore students would be rezoned with opening of the new Arlington Elementary School, so there would be some boundary alignments because we would have a new facility up there as well. This next component, I think it deserves a little bit of discussion. One of the things that was very important for the committee was to address the underutilization at the junior high levels. And so there's going to be a couple of components of this recommendation that does address that. And one of the things was, the Hutchinson location was probably one of our more aged locations, and that will be the location where the Career and Technical Center is being recommended. And so we are recommending that those students then go into Workman. And that's for an abundance of reasons. There was a lot of discussion on this over several days and many, many hours. It's not to be taken lightly. But that would have the least impact in terms of our feeder school alignment, what have you. And so we're recommending a Workman classroom addition for the consolidation of Hutchinson students into Workman. And then included in the plan is site acquisition funds for both the Fine Arts Center and the athletics complex. And I believe also for the agricultural science facility, some land acquisition for farming. The next renovations that are being recommended would be at every elementary level facility that would have 2 science labs and 1 strings room at each facility with hands-on science experience and an acoustically appropriate fine arts learning environment for strings. There would be a renovation of existing career tech and athletic spaces at each high school, as I mentioned before, that would be, again, freeing up some additional space that would release some overcrowding because we'll have an activity center that would have multiple uses there. Renovation and upgrade of existing fine art spaces at every high school. We also are recommending, again, to somewhat address the underutilization of our junior high facilities. We're recommending relocation of Newcomer Center and Venture to Ferguson Junior High, and special ed alternate curriculum programs, one additional high school or junior high site on the south side of the district. And this is because we recognize that it's becoming harder and harder from a mobility perspective for people in the north side or south side of town to go across town for the special ed classes. Facility improvements is almost half of what I'm going to cover tonight in terms of total dollar amounts of recommendation for capital improvements. And this is to make sure that we preserve and protect, and in some cases bring our existing facilities up to standards that are world-class standards. So we identified through a comprehensive facilities assessment that you all charged the administration to do, started a little over a year ago. Utilization of all of our classrooms was taken into consideration. In addition to that, though, there was an exhaustive review of every single facility that this district has in its portfolio. So a comprehensive facilities assessment was done, a needs list was established, common standards were used for assessments for all facilities. I think personally one of the things that is most rewarding to me is that we are really trying to level the playing field for every single student within AISD, that they all have like facilities, they all have like opportunities. Additional keyless entrance points at all schools. My co-chair Jeff Williams is going to go through some security aspects, so I won't go into that, but some of those dollars that are included in this component of the facilities do overlap between the security aspect he's going to cover and actual facilities budgets. Parking lot improvements and expansions in those facilities that need those, flooring and ceiling improvements, landscaping improvements, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing upgrades, scheduled roof replacements and repairs, and we have some facilities that are not in compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act, and we need to get that in compliance, and those dollars are included in the plan. So talking dollars and cents, the Career Tech Center scheduled an estimated $46 million. The district-wide Fine Arts Center is $32 million. The district-wide athletic complex, again, the auditorium, competition gym for gymnastics and wrestling, $25 million. Agricultural science facility, $2.5 million. The 2 new elementary schools, $48 million. 6 multi-purpose activity centers, again, 1 per high school, $60 million or $10 million per high school. Repurposing Rockmore for Fine Arts Dual Language Academy, $7 million, and $7 million to repurpose Corey for like manner and use. Further, the Workman Junior High Classroom Addition is scheduled at $7 million to accommodate the students that would be moving over from Hudson Junior High. Site acquisition, again, for the Fine Arts Center as well as the Athletics Center, $5 million. The conversion, making sure we have established science labs and strings rooms in each elementary school is $18 million. Renovation of existing CTE space at each high school. Again, this will also free up some of the overcrowding and relieve that at our high school levels because those CTA classes, many of them would be relocated to the Career and Tech Center. Renovation of existing fine arts space at each high school, $8 million. I'm sorry, the CTA space renovation is $6 million. Relocating the Newcomer Center, $100,000. Special Ed Alt Curriculum Center at 1 junior high and 1 high school, again, to provide easier transportation north and south for those families that are affected, $13 million. And then, obviously, the deficiencies in life cycle replacements. Those of you not familiar with life cycle replacements that may be listening as taxpayers, these would be things that have been identified that need to be replaced in the next 5 years. That's the scope of this entire bond package. And that is $267,788,327. So total facilities recommendations is $552,388,327. Again, we don't take lightly making recommendations of this magnitude. We really believe that to be a world-class school district, we need to take some bold initiatives, and we did take into consideration the fiscal responsibility of taking this type of an action. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Chad. You know, we felt like in our committee that it was very important that we take care of our existing facilities, and in our community dialogue, we heard that time and time again. Let's be sure and take care of our existing facilities before we propose buying or building new ones. And I think we have definitely done that here in this program, and I think you can see that from what Chad just presented. It's not just taking care of the air conditioning. We're making real differences in our schools throughout the district, not just in one area, but throughout. They're making a difference in each one of these facilities. Well, I'm going to cover some other things that we need. You know, there's a few things that we need in these buildings there, and I'm going to start out with fine arts. Well, it's real interesting because fine arts has been one of the strengths of our school district. We still are nationally known here for our fine arts, but yet we have some aging tools that need to be replaced. We've got real needs as far as instruments, uniforms, risers, choir shells, and of course facilities, which Chad covered. We need to be able to give these tools to our teachers and to our students so that they can continue on and be able to work with it. And I think it will be a very uplifting thing for our teachers and students too, as they strive to continue to be nationally recognized. Our recommendations include promoting access to fine arts programs. We want every student that can to have that opportunity. We want to remove the barriers that are preventing our students from participating in fine arts. And then, of course, instruments are a big part of that. Providing them for students who cannot afford to purchase their own can make a huge difference. And, of course, then again, we will see program growth then. A lot of our students want to be a part of this but can't afford to now. Looking at the dollars here, you see the band instruments, orchestra instruments, the risers and shells and instruments that will go to our choir and elementary, but also uniforms. I think you can see that we have some aging uniforms, and we have done a great job of taking care of them and using them, and we do use them for a long time, many times 10, 15 years, and I know that there are a lot of volunteers that are sewing on those and repairing them. And it is time for some replacement there and to take care of this and another to extend the life cycle there on it. That amount is $9,828,738,000. Well, safety and security is definitely one of the top priorities for all of us. It has been talked about. I've seen here many on the school board and many of your meetings, PTA meetings. It's on the news. This is very exciting to be able to take some moves here to improve the security and safety here in our schools and to work to prevent problems that can arise. So to start out with, our recommendation includes replacing some of our old security cameras and expanding that coverage to 80%, and then our DVR replacements also. Well, digital signage is also very important there in emergency notification, as is our public address systems there in getting the word out and being able to quickly get to our students and teachers. Bus and passenger tracking. This was a big one in our transportation subcommittee, in fact, too, about trying to see where they are and be able to know where our buses and passengers were. And then wireless phones. That's been well documented how strategic that is for our campus administrators to have wireless phones. These will really make a difference here in safety and security. Now, moving into technology, I just got to share this, is that, you know, schools without technology remind me of a house without electricity in a winter storm. You know, you can get by, and you can put some wood in the fireplace and get by, but I don't think any of us are calling the electric company and say, don't worry about turning on the electricity. Well, it's the same way with our schools. If we don't put in the technology to them, we are missing out. And this is one of the key components here to our schools, is to have the technology. When I think about the opportunity that our kids could have
with this component right here, the opportunity to be able to go and research on the internet, to be able to go to the best sources available, for them to be able to hear a Harvard professor talk about their subject, for them to be able to hear one of the inventors who actually invented whatever they're studying. It gets very, very exciting, and that's what we're talking about here. One is we would have wireless in all of our schools. We would actually be able to access the internet there in our schools. We also would have increased video technology, new voicemail systems, disaster recovery, and then of course upgrade our broadcast studio and boardroom AV equipment, again getting the word out here to our parents and students. But yet we have some maintenance to do, and we're not ignoring the maintenance as we're moving ahead, and that is device replacements. As you may recall, we have a 5-year cycle in which we need to replace them and to update that. We have our virtual desktops, campus copiers, and network printer replacements. And then mobile devices for students and teachers to increase. Again, a very exciting topic in our committees was actually looking at the opportunity here for all of our students to have the opportunity to utilize the technology. And it also was very uplifting to us to see how responsible it was going to be by our staff and teachers, and how that it would be a phased implementation. It would be proven out as we continue to go throughout the district with each one of our programs and getting these devices out to our students and teachers. And of course, you'll see that second item is exactly what I'm talking about, mobile device management. This will be responsibly done, and that was a key thing that we asked a lot of questions about, and staff was very well prepared there in answering those questions and making sure that these mobile devices are properly managed there as we move ahead. Classroom technology standards. Teacher laptops, a basic that we in business have. Again, the teachers need that. Projectors that are ceiling mounted, but also so that they will have a short throw so you can actually have the lights on and not have to turn the lights on to see the image now. And it's great that the technology is increasing. And then another great thing out there is that the prices are coming down on the technology. It's going to allow our money to go further than it did in past bond elections. And then, of course, projector screens and document cameras are phenomenal tools there in our classroom. This, again, was another important part of that. We have seen our teachers and students be very creative when campus grants have been put out there. And already they're receiving ideas there to how to use this technology there and looking at innovative uses. So there is going to be some money set aside for campus grants that will, and I'll just go through this, innovative uses of technology that transform learning in the classroom. And then, of course, shifts from a teacher-driven to a student-driven learning culture. And we all know the more involved the student gets, the better chance we've got for them to learn. And, of course, we also want to foster the 21st century skills by providing opportunities for student engagement, creativity, and critical thinking as outlined in strategic planning. This is the 21st century, y'all, and what opportunities we have here that are within our grasp in this recommendation. And then, of course, it would be aligned with curriculum documents, instruction model, and the International Society for Technology and Education standards. Then we also would have special instructional and co-curricular programs in which, in art, we would have iPad minis to be able to use in our elementary art classes. The way that we're actually functioning out in the real world in business. Our children would have the opportunity to be learning the same way that we operate there. And then in athletics, we would have our portable PA systems and portable HD camcorders. You know, athletics, it's been amazing how well our AISD has done in athletics, but yet with so few tools. And yet here we're starting to move ahead, and I think we've been very responsible in how we're moving ahead. We're not talking about building a grandiose stadium, but yet going to each of our schools and trying to improve the opportunities that they have in each of the schools. In journalism, cameras and lenses, MacBook Pro laptops, and then of course in library services, 15 iPads for the elementary library. And y'all, you see these numbers. There was an incredible amount of data compiled there, both of our existing and proposed. You know, it was a phenomenal job, and we got to witness that. These numbers that you see here were just not plucked out of the air. There was a lot of staff time, a lot of consultant time poured into it, and then conversely, there was a lot of learning time for us as committee members there so that we could see exactly what we needed, and they listened to our input too. So when you see a number here, know that that 15 iPads is really based on a lot of data there that how that was derived. And then of course iPad carts, and then special education to actually have adaptive learning. Now, how much does it cost? First of all, safety and security, how do you put a price on that? You know, here we have an opportunity to take a huge leap in making our schools more safe and secure. We have the opportunity here too to take care of our equipment replacement and then incredibly increase our access to technology so that we don't have empty classrooms that don't have that technology, which really sends us to another level. And then our technology standards, campus transformation initiatives that we talked about, and then the special instructional and curricular programs totals $82,633,000. Transportation. Well, if the students can't get there, we don't have much of a chance, do we? And in the last bond election, I think it was really proved out the value there of our bus replacement. And then, of course, we hear the stories here of so many school districts that can't get to their kids and are having trouble, and that has not been this school district, and it's been a very proven, a very strong department here in the school district. Well, we're looking at continuing our program here of replacement of our buses and adding to that so that we not only can get them to school, we can get them to the programs that we're talking about having. And it's very important because so many of our students need this transportation. First of all, we're looking at replacing 59 regular ed buses, adding 12, and the mix of propane and diesel. Propane is very cost effective, and the diesel has come a long ways. That used to be a bad name to have diesel, and now it's much more cost effective. And we have a very good mix there of those buses because, and I'll just mention this, we need some of these diesel buses to have more horsepower, especially when we're going on field trips and so forth there and getting on the highway, and that is one of the reasons for that mix. And then, of course, we have so many off-campus programs that we need to be able to support that are listed here on the slide. Special education buses. It is phenomenal how far the buses have come, and especially when you look at the special education buses and how much safer they are and better. And we're looking at replacing 37 special education buses, adding 6. They would all be 100% propane and support, of course, the program growth of special education. And then there's always the ancillary vehicles that are very important to keep us going. And we're looking at replacing 130 of those, adding 20. And it's student programs, security and maintenance. And another comment from the subcommittee on transportation that we had too is that we were very impressed that we don't just look at, okay, if a bus gets this old or this many miles, we replace it. It's not done that way. It's looking at the record. It's looking at the condition. There is a whole myriad of factors that they're looked at, and it's not just taking the out of offline just because it's a certain age or certain miles. The condition is looked at. And I think that helps us tremendously. And as it was mentioned, depending on what roads they travel, maybe how long it stays in there if it's on rough roads versus others. You see the dollars here to replace and add our buses and service vehicles here is $18,279,213. Summary here of this, of it all, combining what Chad had shared here and what I just went through. The facilities, which is not just maintenance, but actually getting them up to where they need to be for us to really have premier facilities, is $552,388,327. But know that money was cut out of this, and we were fiscally responsible. That was not the starting number here, and in fact there were several $100 million cut out here of these numbers. And then fine arts was $9,828,738. The safety and security, the $82 million. Transportation, $18 million. For a total capital needs recommendation of $663,129,278. We did take into account the tax implications. We looked at that. We also tried to be very responsible to try to make it, but yet here are some of the comments that came from our committee. One is that I mentioned before, that we've got to get our current facilities where they need to be, and they need to see visible improvements here in them. Number two is that we do have a certain amount of catch-up to do, and then we don't want to just catch up. We want to move ahead. And this is an opportunity for us to do that. Another thing, too, is that we want to make a statement to our students and teachers that we're supporting them, and we want to create an environment where they can do more. It is amazing what our teachers and principals and staff have done with tools that have gotten older and outdated, and facilities that need some help. And now is our time. And that was another statement, too, that now is the time for us to be able to do this. And then the other thing that I think was very important is that we had gone through and felt like and poured over this, that there was, when I asked for the vote, we had unanimous support. Everyone was very excited about it. But we had an amendment to the motion. And the amendment was that they did not want to see this cut because we felt like we really were at the bottom of the amount that we needed there to really achieve the goals of the strategic plan. And we certainly respect that, but I do want to share that with you there with it. We know you have a lot of responsibility and know much better there too, but I did want to share that with you there as we move forward. We are available for questions, but before I get into questions, I've got to do some thank yous. One is my co-chair, Chad Bates, did a great job. It was awesome. And the committee, we had some very long discussions. And our last meeting, I thought, was just phenomenal. And people weren't afraid to say, hey, I've got some questions on this, and it brought out, it made it a better recommendation there for that, and I appreciate people speaking out. Jackie, I won't mention any names, and there were others too, there too, and it made it stronger there too, and then I appreciate the long hours that the staff put in. And then in our community dialogue, when people came, they came concerned about their school. The input was meaningful. I didn't feel like any of my time was wasted in talking to and then these were, some of them were parents, some of them were just concerned citizens, some of them were principals and teachers. And then on our committee, I've got to say we had a lot of principals and teachers that they worked all day and had to deal with this, and then they came up and spent the time here, and they are passionate about their jobs. And then, you know, and I love to hear, too, that each one of them was sharing the needs that they had and how that came about. But I want to thank our committee there for putting in the time, because it's been a lot of meetings and a lot of long meetings. And then our staff, led by Dr. Cavazos and Cindy Powell, were phenomenal. And I really appreciated how patient they were with us and with the citizens that they had there. And it was great that they had the answers. And then, in addition to that, part of the reason they had the answers is because our consultant team, DeYoung and Richter, had really done their homework, and Tracy Richter and David Sturts cared. They weren't just hired out-of-town guns. They took a passion for Arlington Independent School District, and they, too, were very patient with us and went through the information there with it. And then I want to thank the school board for allowing us to listen to us and to hear, you know, what we had to say, because we really do feel like this is a critical time for us to make a difference. And the foundation of any community is the education. And I think that it's awesome now that this is one of the first steps, really, in sending Arlington again on its way to another good couple of decades here of starting with our education and getting this taken care of here and making a difference there with it. But we're staff, consultants, Chad, and the rest of the committee, we're all here to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Thank you, Mr. Bates. At this time, we'll open it up for any questions. Mr. Hips.
Guys, thank you very much. I mean, you chaired this committee in a manner that we're very appreciative. Both of you have done and worked beyond just the committee. You were meeting with Ms. Powell or Dr. Cavazos for many times, and we're forever indebted to you for it, because you did this as a labor of love. Because there is absolutely nothing that you got out of it except for some stale chips at times. But we really do appreciate your efforts. I mean, it's tremendous. To the committee, you did a spectacular job, better than I could ever imagine that you would do. So each committee member, thank you for the time and effort that you put into it. Just a few things that I just wrote down. You mentioned that when you saw the initial numbers of everything that could be done in the district, it was much higher than what you're coming back with your recommendation of $663 million. Am I right in on the facility side, it was approaching 900 million? Was that correct? So
I believe so.
Okay, so what we're doing is we're saying that you actually, it's not like you're bringing something back to this board that we actually have to do a lot of picking through. You've kept us apprised along the way. So, you know, cutting out more than $200 million is showing that the committee, as well as what you're bringing towards the board, was something that was very fiscally responsible. You're also one of your comments that I heard you say a minute ago was that we're not just trying to catch up, we're trying to take a step ahead. And for anybody that's a taxpayer in Arlington, yes, there will be repercussions with the bond, but you know, your housing values, and when we look at what our neighboring districts have, we are at a deficit. So what I'm really excited about seeing is the possibilities that we can embrace to get ourselves first on an even playing field, and then secondly, being able to push ahead. Can you imagine with the Fine Arts Center what our already spectacular fine arts department can be able to do? And one of the things that I think this board is proudest of with our when we were talking about career tech is something that we wanted in place. We want every child, because we know not every child is going to necessarily excel in college, but we want them to be able to excel in life, and that career tech center is going to advance us and support every child in this district in a different way. And so I really, really appreciate that. And a couple of your slides, there are a couple of things such as the Fine Arts Center and such. You left out that the locations are still to be determined. There's a lot of things within this whole package that still is going to be left to be determined when it's talking about location of items and such. But sitting through these, I heard the committee say many times, or the committee members say, are we sure that, there's not schools left out, that everybody's going to get something that's going to be able to advance or enhance their child's education, and there is. And so I want to make sure that that's clear. Another thing is I know that as we go forward, the public can be pretty confident that we're going to have a public dialogue when we're talking about repurposing the buildings and different things like that. And for staff and teachers, man, something might be affecting my school. We're going to walk through each one of those situations. If it's talking about a repurposing of a school, it is. I would say the intent of this board is that we're looking to advance the AISD and not cut back. Last thing is one thing that you mentioned on the technology piece, and I just want to also assure the public that we're going to go and as it comes to security or technology, there was a mention, and I'll use one that you had pointed out, was 15 iPads for, a given libraries. Well, the term tablets may have been better. We're not saying that we're going to advance Apple's fortune here. We're going to evolve with technology. If next year Samsung has the best tablet, that may be something that we go with. So I don't want us to get locked in on a name brand either, but I know that that's something that we
it shouldn't be like Coke or Dr. Pepper's.
Right. I could just see Apple stock going up here as we were speaking. So from that standpoint, your presentation was excellent. Thank you for what you brought for us. Thank you for the hard work. And I just wanted to clarify a few of those points.
Tribs, I've got to say one thing too that I did. We heard from several of our senior members that said that, hey, when we started talking about the tax implications, there was many times that it came out that we have to do something here. It's not, our property values are going to go down. And then say, in fact, we won't be able to sell our house if we don't make a stand now and make a difference and move forward.
Great point. Thank you for pointing.
I'd like to add to this. I've sat on, I don't know how many committees and what have you over my span since 1981 in Arlington, citizen bond committees, numerous financial futures committees. I've served an executive officer at a multi-billion-dollar bank. I have never in my business or personal career ever seen the depth of thought and the depth of data that was analyzed to come up with these recommendations in my lifetime. And as a taxpayer, you all need to hear that, because you're to be applauded as a board, because the transparency that you bring to the process by having a citizens committee involved like this is almost unheard of in communities. And I think it's important that any taxpayer out there recognizes that not just consultants, but passionate consultants, as Jeff said, brought us data that was, there was not a piece of data that I could possibly have thought that we needed analyzed that wasn't there at our fingertips to analyze. And so, again, tremendous amount of thought in it. Fiscal responsibility, I know, is critically important to everyone. I think it's important to point out that our declining debt service for this district over the next couple of years makes the timing for this move tremendous in terms of from a financial perspective. We have our tax rates, our taxable debt service, is going down significantly, which leaves us some latitude to move forward with initiatives like this, and that needs to be factored in as well. Our overall tax rate compared to neighboring districts is in good shape, even if this goes forward as a bond election. So those are critical components, I think, Mr. Hibbs, that need to be said.
Very well said, Mr. Bates. Mr. Pompa.
Thank you, President Hall. Again, thank you all for the amount of work that you put into this. I know there was a lot of nights that you didn't get to have dinner with your families, and you know, some of these meetings went a little bit longer than what's were scheduled. But you know, I want to remind us, the board, of that little quote that really kind of got this going. That one student that told us they walked up to a school that was a really nice school. I think they were visiting another district. And what they shared with us was their thought was, wow, they must really care about their kids here. Look at the school that they built for them. And we recognize that the physical environment impacts us. All of us go to work, and it makes a big difference whether we go to a dumpy place to go to work or we go to a state-of-the-art facility to go to work. We're more productive. We recognize that in the business world, and that's why, you know, the big companies invest in their physical environment, in what they do. The same thing here with us. We recognize that the physical environment impacts the student learning, because at the end of the day, that's what really counts for us. For all of us is, are the students going to be able to learn better? And we've accepted it as a fact, I think, up here, that yes, the physical environment does impact that. And then the makeup of the committee. You know, we had from, like you said, parents, teachers, principals, but individuals like you that are so involved in the community, that you've served in so many different boards and different capacities in every which way. Our city manager serving on this committee and actually sitting there to the 2, 3, 4-hour meetings after, you know, doing what he does for the city. I don't think I've ever seen a committee with a caliber of individuals really engaged and dedicated as we saw with this committee. And I think that the recommendations that you guys made are a reflection of the quality of individuals that we had on that committee. So again, I commend you guys for that. I think that the economic impact to our community from something like this should not be understated. And I've shared that my wife and I picked Arlington in 1998 to live here because Arlington had quality schools. And we have a business, we have involved parents and a big family. We're a big family that is here in Arlington because of the quality of the schools. And over the last 15 years, what we hear is like, well, Plano's got this, and Colleyville's got that, and Keller's got this, and even Mansfield has really great facilities, but Arlington doesn't. And so we know that there are good families leaving our community in search of better facilities, better school districts for the students. And so we have to invest some dollars to get those to make sure that the families that we have here stay here. And then when people are looking for a place to relocate, businesses, individuals, big and small companies, Arlington is in serious consideration for that. So, you know, I think it's great. And again, the data, that every recommendation that you made is backed up by real data. I know that our consultants went through and analyzed, I'm sure, hundreds of thousands of data points to do this. And so, I mean, I think it's phenomenal. There's nothing that I had hoped for that you guys didn't include on there. So congratulations. Thank you for the effort. Thank you all for what you've done, not just for the district, but for our entire community. I think this will position us to, again, get to that world-class level in our district and then push the city to be that as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pompa. Mr. Barron.
Thank you, President Hogg. Thank you, gentlemen, and thank you to the committee. It's an extraordinary effort on everybody's part. When I watched the President give the State of the Union message last night, I would have sworn he had a copy of our strategic plan there, and he was reading from it, because every time he said current technology, I was thinking of us and how far ahead we are compared to the rest of the country. I'm so proud of this district for that. We're really on the right track. I did have a couple of questions. The multi-purpose activity centers, are they to replace the field houses on each campus?
If you recall, in the facilities presentation, there was repurposing of existing facilities that are athletic facilities. And so, yes, weight rooms and those type of workout facilities, what have you, would be included, is my understanding, in the activity centers.
And will they have actual classrooms in them?
I'm going to defer to staff on that question. And while Mr. Carlisle's coming up, let me mention, this is one of those areas that I feel like we're catching up, because our neighboring school district, HEB, already has activity centers like this, and we don't in Arlington.
The goal is for these activity centers to have all of the outdoor sports dressing facilities in those. So any of those outdoor sports that are currently housed in existing buildings would be moved out there, and then therefore that space could be repurposed. As we walk our way through the program, we kind of have a program identified, but it's not completely nailed. There would be some meeting room, study hall kind of space in that facility.
That sounds reasonable. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Ms. Powell, I had two questions for you, I guess. I recall on the last bond when we bought the buses, there were significant rebates and incentives from the government. Are those still in effect?
We have been able to get some rebates, actually more than we expected, and it kind of varies year to year. That's federal money, so if money's appropriated, then we will pursue that. Right now, we do still have have access to a 50-cent per gallon rebate on propane fuel. We don't know going forward if there will be any more rebate money available for the buses themselves.
Thank you. And that's it for you. And I had a comment about the $663 million number, which is a huge number. If we're going to buy a house as a working person, then we have no qualms about buying a house that's once, twice, three times what our annual salary is. Our annual budget is, can I say 500? If we include food service and debt service. I'm trying to round off here.
Yeah, the 468 is the general operating budget this year.
Okay. So can I say 500?
You can round to whatever
Okay.
you would like.
Thank you, ma'am. What I'm getting at is that number is big, but this is a big district, and we have a big budget to start with. And in effect, we're borrowing a little over a year's budget to allow us to operate for a long time, for a house. That's all. It's not that big a number. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hogg.
Thank you, Mr. Barron. Ms. Sullins.
Thank you, President Hogg. That wasn't an easy job, was it? The work that you guys did is remarkable, and I know from where you started and the information you had was strong, but it took a lot of time and effort to break that down and have very deep conversations. I stopped in a meeting or two and I heard conversations that were very complex and challenging, and it created such a tremendous product. I also very happy to see how well this aligns with the strategic plan. I think it's further validation. The strategic plan is already moving us forward, and this is the next giant part of that. And so I was glad to see that that alignment, because it gave us another opportunity to examine it, to examine the the strategic plan with a very broad part of the community to make sure that it's not just the 8 of us at this table that are in agreement on where this district is going and how it's going to get there, but that it's in the entire community. And so I was very, very pleased to see that. And I can't even imagine, couldn't even estimate at this point the number of man-hours that were put into developing this proposal that will be transformative for students' education, transformative for the entire city, and I'm very grateful. Wanted to just confirm one thing from the last bond advisory committee that Mr. Hibbs and I sat on it at a time. To this one, are we still looking at a 5-year cycle? I know this is a 5-year plan, so I assume that would mean that we'd have needs.
The charge of the committee was to identify and prioritize capital needs for the next 5 years.
I think it's important as we get all of these systems that have been improving and changing up to the standard that we keep that, and so we keep it humming. And with the life cycle replacements in particular, I think will be very helpful to keep, once the district achieves the standards that you've set out, that we are able to sustain that and adapt to the new needs as they come. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sullins. Dr. Rush, I've got a couple of pieces, if you don't mind, go right before you. Thank you guys, gentlemen, both. But let me thank even before you guys came around. Our board took this as an initiative, and I see our friends from Jacobs Engineering in the audience, and I think we can't forget that this came from the board taking a bold step on a facilities assessment, and our friends at Jacobs taking on a huge, massive project to get all that data so that we knew where we needed to go. So it's not just 7 of us going, I think that's a good idea, let's build this. That's the worst way you can strategically build and construct. And so I have to thank our friends from Jacobs in the audience for the truly most detailed facilities assessment I think I've ever seen in my entire life. So I thank you for that. And then the committee truly putting that work together. I do have a couple of questions over this, and Mr. Hibbs, I agreed. I'm glad you brought that point up. This did come in at almost $900 million, and our committee did a great job of cutting this down. Because I have to tell you, I like cutting on some of those things. So it's hard to look and say, where's the extra pieces we can cut? And evaluating this, I think, and sitting on many of those committee meetings, I saw many of those cuts that we normally make as a board occurring from y'all's group right there. So I appreciate that. Even though I'm not gonna lie, I like making some cuts on some things sometimes, but the committee did a great job. Ms. Powell, would you please help me on our current INS tax rate, about where we rank with the rest of the districts and what we think our INS tax rate will go up to? Because right now we're currently one of the lowest tax rates.
We are out of
comparable.
Dallas and Tarrant County and the other large districts around the state. We have one of the lowest INS rates. We did look at how our rate would compare with those districts, assuming that this bond or this capital needs recommendation becomes a bond package and passes, and we have to levy a tax to repay those bonds. We've estimated, with the help of First Southwest, that the maximum tax rate impact from this package would be 40 cents. And that compares right now to, we're at 25.2 cents. So if we are at that max rate today, this assumes that everybody else is at the same rate, that there would still be 12 out of all those districts that have a higher INS tax rate than we would. So.
And Ms. Powell, we've still kept our, we've consistently not approved or discussed even a rollback tax election to
That's
increase.
right. We tax on our M&O rate, we tax at $1.04, and that's the maximum rate that we can levy without going to the voters for a tax ratification election.
I thank you for that. I think it's just reaffirms how serious we take our tax rates that come up, and I think our whole committee did that, and I think our board takes that also. And I was glad to see, pleasantly surprised to see where we'd still rank on those tax numbers, that we're still very competitive for our businesses that are coming in to still have the lower tax rate from comparable districts, so that we are still helping the business community that's coming in our home community, and our homes, keeps our homes affordable for all. Ms. Powell, one other piece I'd asked for, and I know it's a very tough estimate, do we have any idea of what our recurring cost would be with all these implementations and the programs adding, so that we can start accounting for that in our general budget also?
We do. Once all of them are online, we've been working on this even up through today.
And I know this is an assumption also,
But
Ms.
it
Powell, 'cause
is,
these things
but
are not
we've
final.
taken them facility by facility and estimated the staffing that will be required above and beyond what we have in place today to manage those, plus utilities and any other maintenance costs associated with them. They're all fully operational in 5 years. In today's dollars, we're looking at $3.2 million operating cost. And 2 years ago, when we began looking at East Arlington in particular and how we could relieve crowding in the elementary schools there, we talked about different configurations with elementary schools. And at that time, we went through a similar analysis. And so I was very interested to see that what we're estimating right now for the new elementary schools is similar to what we had estimated 2 years ago in terms of the staffing that we would need and the utilities for that. And so I felt good about that estimate from before and this one.
That 3.2 million is a good number. We're currently
For,
running a
for all,
surplus.
right, for all of them, and that assumes that all the new buildings are online. And so, the next step for us is to begin trying to sequence these things, and we already have some thoughts. I mean, there's some dominoes that have to fall, in order for things to happen in the appropriate order. And so, when those costs begin coming online into our operating budget will depend on precisely that sequence.
Perfect. Thank you, Ms. Powell. And Mr. Ebbs, another good, you brought up the technology piece. I think it's a critical factor. These are all what we think we need right now. When the time comes to actually purchase and buy, we don't want to make sure we're just stuck to this one idea. We want to make sure we're getting the latest, greatest, newest technology, newest idea. And as we saw from the 2009 bond, sometimes things come about and they have to have a change. So with that, when that change occurs, so we still make sure we're getting community feedback, I'd ask my colleagues, are we still considering the idea of continuing our Citizens Bond Oversight Committee and having that piece of our community reach in to how we are overseeing the bond use? So when things do change from a bond that we're asking, because it's a big step to ask the voters to go out for this, are we still considering having that Citizens Bond Oversight Committee as a group? I see heads nodding on this. Okay, perfect. And we can formalize that when we come into the final piece. And just a reminder, in 2009, we stepped up and did a $197.5 million bond. Most of us were on this board or served on that bond committee that brought that on at that time. And that was truly, we called it a bond for basics. And that was, we hadn't done a bond in 10 years, which was a mistake by this district. And we had to make up for it. And it got us to that level. And that may be being generous of where it got us to. This one, and I agree with our chairs, this is the level of getting us up to where we have to be, because people do buy homes based on your schools. And so I think the committee said it multiple times. Yes, this is a tax implication, but what happens if we don't do it? And I think that's a fair assumption on that. I think the committee, I thank everyone for that. Dr. Resch, I know you wanted to go last. Ms. Solons, do you want to go real quick, or? Okay, perfect. Gotcha, Ms. Solons. With that, I'm finished. Dr. Reich, I'll let you finish up for us.
Thank you, President Hogg. I echo all the comments that everybody has said, previously stated. Jeff, Chad, thank you so much. Your leadership's phenomenal. Our function as a board committee, the Community Engagement Committee, was to be part of this Capital Needs Steering Committee, but more from afar, ex officio capacity, to be there to ask some minor questions, provide clarity, and really let the committee work. And you guys functioned so well. You, and with the help of our consultants, we're a data-driven board, we're a data-driven district, and to deal with the analytics provided in the data, I won't say data dump, because it wasn't. It was, you had the data dump from Jacobs, and the facilities assessment, and you had to put the analytics on it as the consultants to translate that into tangible pieces, digestible pieces for all of us, including us in the board committee, to understand. And it was done with stellar excellence. I really appreciate you guys doing that. As members of the community, to dedicate your time to learn this stuff is it really speaks of your passion and your love for this community as much as we have it here, and I really do appreciate that. The CBOC going forward, I absolutely saw the heads nod. President Hogg, that's to me a no-brainer. It was a very, very healthy process. Still is a healthy process from our 09 process, our 09 package, and I think that's an excellent way to move forward. The end point here, Mr. Barron made a great point that in perspective, that number is not a lot. The reality is that is more than we can bear as a board, as a district with our current fund balance, et cetera. It's very evident that, excuse me, at this point, we have to let our entire community weigh in on this to side with the vision that we have for this district, the vision that you have all articulated very well in the facilities assessments and visions and capital needs. So with that was the buildup. I would like to make a motion on behalf of the committee, therefore not needing a second, that we as a board accept the recommendations completely as presented by our capital needs steering committee. And additionally, that an action item be placed on our next meeting agenda, February 6, 2014 agenda, to consider calling a bond election to fund these recommendations.
Perfect. Thank you, Dr. Reich. We have a motion and not needing a second coming from committee. Before we get into discussion, Mr. Pompa?
I just wanted to make a point, and I asked Ms. Powell to just put some numbers together real quick on what kind of community input that we had in this. So Ms. Powell, would you tell us a little bit about that? I know that we had the several meetings and then community meetings where we invited people at the high schools plus surveys. So will you kind of guide us through that a little bit just so that we can get across to the community what kind of input we had before we came up with these recommendations?
We started with a capital needs steering committee, so there are 38 individuals on that committee. They hosted community dialogues. We also posted questionnaires for those dialogues online. I don't have the exact count on the dialogues, but there were more than 500 people that participated either live in a dialogue or through one of the online questionnaires, and we had those in two different dialogues, one in October, one set in December at different locations. So then we also had a community survey done, a phone survey. There were 404 respondents on the community phone survey. We also did an employee survey that captured a third of our employees, so over almost 2,500 employees. So if you add all those up, more than 3,400 people have had some opportunity to have input into this process.
It just speaks to the integrity of the process and the transparency that this committee was very focused on. So I just wanted to make sure that we mentioned that before we move forward.
Mr. Pompa, can I also interject that the committee looked at and analyzed the preferences from all these community dialogues, and all of that was taken in consideration in these recommendations. So it wasn't just to get opinions. They were boiled down to statistical, empirical evidence, and we looked at those and we took those in consideration. And I believe in almost every case from the recommendations, they mirrored the community dialogue results.
I expect nothing less, so thank you.
And Mr. Pompa, as Ms. Sullen said, every principal then also reviewed documents of what would be occurring at their school and gave approvals for what's happening. Even on some of those repurposings, it's sometimes a good thing for a school, changes that are coming to certain groups on there. So with that, we have a motion, second from committee. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. 6 trustees present. Ms. Pena is representing us at a state association meeting. 6 trustees present, 6 trustees voting in the affirmative. We will discuss this again on February 6th for final wording. Thank you. thank you to all the committee, our consultants on both sides, from the first side to the finished side. Wonderful work. Y'all have done a great job. And thank you for all your hard work. And to our committee, thank you once again. Next, we'll go on to discussion action item B, consider salary market study recommendations. Dr. Cavazos.
Thank you, President Hogg. And another part of our strategic plan deals with making sure that we're competitive in the market with recruitment and retention of employees. And so at this time, Cindy Powell will introduce and begin our discussion on market study.
President Hogg, board members, Dr. Cavazos. In our strategic plan, we have a goal. It's goal number 3, that is the AISD will recruit and retain the most effective people by rewarding excellence and providing opportunities for continual growth. So one of our strategies to help us achieve that goal is that we would engage a human resource consultant or consulting firm to review the district's current salary structure to ensure compensation is properly aligned within the system and also to the external market to ensure that our salaries are competitive. So we have done that. We issued an RFQ in July. We conducted interviews in late August and into September, and the board awarded a contract to the Texas Association of School Boards, or TASB, to conduct that salary market study. So we've been working with TASB since late September on this project. We started with some planning meetings here, gave them an enormous amount of data. They've analyzed it. We've met with them several times to review that data and ask questions. And so tonight we have their report for you. But a couple of points, I think, to kind of frame the initial conversation. First of all, it's been more than 10 years since we've done any sort of a comprehensive salary market study. And the last one that I recall doing was limited to clerical and technical employees, paraprofessionals. It was not, did not involve all employee families. The board took a very bold step this past summer when we adopted the budget to address this goal. The board increased beginning teacher salary to $50,000 and gave equity adjustments to teachers with years experience all the way up to year 20. So as you'll see in just a moment, our current teacher salaries are very, very competitive within our local market and across the state. During that budget adoption process, as the board was considering those adjustments for the teachers, we mentioned to the board that we needed to go ahead and move forward with that salary market study, especially for employees other than that teacher group. And so the board did direct us to move forward with that, and we conducted the RFQ and made our selection of TASB. So this evening we have Ann Patton, who's a senior compensation consultant with TASB, and she will deliver the salary market study. We're going to switch that.
How do I do this? Yeah. Excuse me. Oh, they're going to get it for me. Oh, good. Well, good. Someone can take care of my technology. There we go. Good evening, President Hogg, Dr. Cavazos, and the board. Thank you for allowing me to be here today. I will probably try not to take up too much of your time. I also want to introduce Kim Scambliss. Kim was one of the TASB consultants that assisted with this study, as well as other staff at TASB back in Austin. The pay study calendar that we agreed to when we did this, when we answered the RFP, the board approved the study in September. By September 25th, we had the initial meeting with the administration. Spent a couple of hours discussing all the options and what kind of market they wanted to use. On October 8th and 9th, we conducted 40 management interviews. We interviewed most of the management and a principal from each level. On December the 4th, we had a video conference update, and we were very excited to be able to use the technology that was available at both ends. December 17th, we had a draft review of the plan, the proposed plan. Since then, we have been modifying it based on the district needs. Whenever I talk to a school district, it is imperative to me that you all understand this is your plan, it's not mine. And so I want everybody here to be very, very comfortable with this. We had another video conference on January the 16th. Last week, we went to the Board Finance Committee, and then this evening, we're doing the board presentation. This was all in accordance with the RFP that we answered back in September. The project activities included initial planning and data collection. We collected data on all the employees in the district. It included demographic information such as their duty schedules, their salaries, their titles, all their payroll information, which we kind of sliced and diced all this data. So just keep in mind, it is a snapshot in time. So the numbers that you're going to see as far as cost estimates are based on your employee population in September. Okay, normal employment has turnover, so it's going to be very close, but it is based on folks that you had with you in September. We assessed competitive pay levels for common jobs. This is where we were able to use the market. Now, when I was here before, we discussed, and in the RFP, I think we mentioned being able to use 12-13 data and aging it forward. We were able to complete our salary survey. TASB conducts a salary survey of 120 different positions every year and have for 25 years. We were able to complete our salary survey in time for us to use 13-14 data. So we didn't have to use older data and age it. We were able to use current data. We evaluated job assignments and recommended pay classifications. We used the interview notes where we went through all the organizational charts, identified jobs, and made sure that we were clear about what they did, as well as used the job descriptions. So we evaluated the jobs, grouped the jobs into similar levels, into different types of pay grades, and then built brand new pay structures for you. And so you'll see those in just a few minutes. The implementation plan refers to the cost estimates. So we did cost estimates based on doing equity adjustments for a lot of different employees, and you will see the cost on that as well. And then we conducted the draft review meetings and prepared the final report. Overall findings, the increases in the teacher pay schedule that you are to be congratulated about, it was great for the teachers. But we need to keep in mind when you ever do a pay increase that's so substantial to teachers that there's other people in that career path. That includes counselors and diagnosticians and LSSPs and assistant principals and principals. So when the teacher pay schedule moved up, it caused what we call compression with some of these other job families. Counselors in particular, that was one of the things we heard in the interviews. And when you do the math, you can look at the counselor schedule. It is actually a little bit lower and is slightly regressive at some levels than a master's degree teacher. So that was one thing that has been was a kind of an unintended consequence of being very generous and aggressive with teacher salaries, which you'll see in just a minute. You did a great job, but now we have to take care of some others in that career path. Qualified candidates, we were told, were rejecting offers due to salary. They're going somewhere else. This is a highly competitive area in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. There's lots of good school districts around here where people just drive from neighborhood to neighborhood. So it's very, very, the market's very, very tight for top talent. Most managers reported concerns with administrative support, paraprofessional, and manual trades pay. I mean, that was almost unanimous. They, were not always sure what everybody made, but they just knew that just had this feeling it was low, and they were very concerned about their pay, as they were justified in that you'll see in just a minute. Right now, you're currently paying degree and licensure statements to exempt staff in lieu of market competitive pay. You've been trying to pay for licenses for electricians when they're really already required for the job. So, but it's been an attempt and been a way for you to try to get those salaries up. And so one of the recommendations is just kind of eliminate that practice and let's put them in a market competitive pay structure as it is and not try to piecemeal and Band-Aid pay strategies that way. The pay structures have not been reviewed in over 10 years. Ms. Powell already mentioned that. The procedures for calculating offers to new hire, promotions, and other employment actions require review. We will be, that's the last piece that we need to do, is we will be going through a procedure manual with your human resources staff to make sure that there's consistency in how you offer hiring salaries, consistency in how promotions are handled, and other types of employment action. Right now, there seems to be kind of a mystery about how salaries are calculated, and so we're going to have it documented in a procedure manual for you. So it's going to be customized. We have a template, and it will be customized for you to make sure you're comfortable. The lack of market competitive pay naturally has caused a little bit negative morale. I don't want to overemphasize this. I mean, I don't think everybody's just horribly unhappy. That's just simply not the case. But it has had an impact when they know that other people who are in other school districts are making more than they are. And then the lack of time records for non-exempt workers. Right now, your time records for non-exempt workers are kept at the campus and department level. We recommend that they're kept centrally at the central office, so that way you can make sure that time is calculated, overtime and all the time is calculated appropriately. So let's look at some market, and I don't know, I'm sorry that this is small, and I don't know whether you can see it on you can see it on your computer. Okay, excellent. These are the local area districts. One of the things we did, of course, we looked at statewide for other districts throughout the state that have over 50,000 students, but you really compete for teachers primarily here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So this particular chart is sorted from highest paying starting salary to lowest paying starting salary. The solid red line going across is your starting salary and where it fits in this hierarchy. As you can tell from the lowest paying district of these 14 to the highest paying districts, I mean, there's only like $5,000. It's really, really close. But you are, AISD is the solid red line. You are above the 75th percentile as far as starting pay goes. When you look at there's Arlington ISD is right here, and then the medians of all of these school districts is reported in this particular row right here. And then you can see the comparison to the median, which is the target that we look at. You exceed, at every 5-year increment, you exceed the median. You're not the highest paying, you're certainly not the lowest paying, and you're very, very competitive at every level. And that's all to very much to do with the actions that you took last year. Statewide, Dallas-Fort Worth, I will tell you, tends to be one of the higher paying areas in the state. So even though there are other large school districts, a lot of the pay issues are dealt with geographically. So some districts like in the Valley or in El Paso may not pay quite as high as the Dallas-Fort Worth area, but they still have large school districts down there. So you compete even more competitively compared statewide with other large districts when you look at this bottom. When you look at this bottom box down here, you're at 6% above at the year 0, and then you're at 3 and 4%, 2% above the median compared to other large school districts. So what you did last year for the teachers was great. I mean, you absolutely did a fine job making sure that the teacher pay was taken care of. Now we just need to kind of take care of some of the others. Stipends. We looked at some teacher stipends. This particular sheet is sorted by enrollment, so that's why Dallas ISD is listed at the top. They reported almost 159,000 students this year. Master's degree stipends, you pay a $1,500 stipend. The median for the local area is about $1,300. One thing that we kind of noticed is, if you were to look by enrollment size, you're kind of right here with, Fort Worth, and you're well above Garland and a little bit below Plano, but you can see that the smaller districts are paying the biggest stipends. One thing, too, to bring to your attention is that Irving, and I talked with Irving about this last year, and we're seeing more of this throughout the state, is Irving actually pays more for a master's degree if it is in their subject matter. So that is something to consider in the future, depending on kind of strategically where you want to go. And it's not something commonly done, but certainly can provide value to the school district. Not a lot of math and science stipends being paid right now. They're fairly expensive. But bilingual is paid by all the school districts. Yours is $3,000, and the median is $3,000. And you can see even statewide, there's, 60% paid. Actually 100% paid bilingual stipends. Bilingual stipends are going to be harder and harder to get. So you don't. There aren't any special ed. There's a few paying special ed, a few paying ESL, and even fewer paying foreign language. So you don't pay those, but hardly anybody else does either. So you're competitive in your master's degree, you're competitive in your bilingual stipend. Teacher incentives, other teacher incentives that we survey for, no one pays additional amount for campus assignment. That is a stipend that would be paid for working in a more difficult school working environment. Nobody pays that in this area. Mentor teacher. Other incentives would include, those are for doctorate degrees. Your department chairs are very close. You pay about $1,700. The median is $2,000. You pay $14. I mean, the median's $14. You're paying almost $1,100. So these are all. These are all very, very close. So your teachers look good. They look really good. More information about teachers. We like to slice and dice data. This is a histogram of teachers' experience. So we've plotted the number of teachers you have in each year of experience. The blue, the bright blue line is your median experience is right about 9.5 years. State average is about 11, so you're fairly close. Notice though that you have a big spike of teachers that have more than 25 years. That's like, that's over 400 teachers that have 25 years. Retirement age is looming at about, I think TRS said about 30 or 31 years is the average age that teachers tend to retire. So we've actually given Mr. Kale additional information about how many teachers over 25 years so we can kind of look. They're going to be leaving the system, and you're going to need to be replacing them. And you're not usually going to replace them with 25-year teachers. Usually, I'll show you your hiring patterns in just a few minutes. This is a pie chart of your newly hired teachers. You hired, or the data that you gave us showed that you had 418 teachers that showed new to the district. But you can see that 74% of the teachers you hired had 0 to 3 years of experience. Another 14% had 4 to 7 years, and 4% had 8 to 10 years. So that's 92% of the teachers that you hire new into your district have 10 years or less of experience. Those with more than 11 years, that 11 years or more, frequently are getting stipends. They may be bilingual, they're coaches, they may have arts and music and bring special skills. One of the things that you all had mentioned, and I heard over and over again from the management and the administration, is that your interest in kind of pursuing alternative types of compensation plan other than just step increases and general pay increases. One thing to consider, and that's written in the recommendations, is consider getting off of a step schedule and actually implement a pay range for your teachers. And if you were to look back in this model, an example would be what it might look like is you see Plano. They've had a pay range for their teachers for years. So they just report a minimum and then they have an average, and that's all they report on our salary survey. So we can give you more information, but I just thought I would put up what it might look like if you were to publish it in your book, on your website. You're just going to have a minimum monthly salary, you have a maximum, and you just basically have a pay range for teachers like you do all the other professionals. Other overall market comparisons, and in your spiral bound book you have just detail ad nauseum, but I thought I would just kind of summarize this. For administrators, we had 17 benchmarks. Overall, the market comparison of all of those averaged together is about 96%. We had 33 benchmarks in professionals. The local market, it was 105. Statewide was about 104. Campus leadership, which is principals and assistant principals, overall was at 98. Statewide was about 100. And then technology, we had 13 benchmarks, and it was around 97%. So when you look at overall, that means there's some high, but there are some that are low. So those are the recommendations that you'll see in just a minute. Administrative support is clerical, and you had 26 benchmarks, and this is validating some of the management's concern about the pay for their paraprofessional staff and their administrators. Their clerical staff. So there were 26 benchmarks, and the overall was about 88% of market. The educational aids, which is all kind of classroom aids and support aids on the campuses, we had 7 benchmarks in there at 97%. And manual trades overall had 22 benchmarks and we're at 95%.
Just a quick question, that overall market, is that local or state?
These, for the administrative support, educational aids, and manual trades, we just use local market. You do not recruit statewide for those jobs. For administrators and for teachers, where you might do a search statewide for certain talent to bring into the Dallas-Fort Worth area, we use statewide. So the recommendations: consider implementing a pay range for teachers, classroom teachers, registered nurses, and librarians. Eliminate the step schedule. Right now, you've got a step schedule for your counselors, but it's lower than a master's degree teacher. Eliminate that. Put counselors in a pay range with other professionals, and that pay range is higher. And we've made some adjustments, or recommending some adjustments to some individuals to adjust your current employees' pay. Discontinued degree and license stipends for your non-exempt families. Just roll it into their base pay. No one loses any money, and put them in a market competitive range instead of trying to band-aid additional stipends and differentials and everything else to try to keep these folks. Update your pay procedures for hiring, promotions, and other actions. Review all your timekeeping processes for your non-exempt workers. Implement new pay structures for all the job groups effective 14-15. I know you are looking at doing mid-year adjustments this year, but the pay structures would be effective for your 14-15 year. And we've redone all of them. You've got brand new pay structures that we're recommending. Provide pay adjustments to those who are below the minimum. You'll see a cost, when you see the line item, you'll see a cost estimate about bringing people up to the new minimum of the pay grade. We didn't leave anybody behind. Everybody got brought up to at least the new minimum of the pay grade. Increase pay for counselors and other professionals to above master's degree teachers to ease some of that internal compression. So we've calculated the cost of moving some of those folks a little bit farther into the range, and then we did another check to make sure that if their pay, even after any other adjustments, is still below where they would be as a classroom teacher with a master's degree, we gave them an additional little bump. The equity adjustments are implemented for any employee. Okay, we've already talked about that. We talked on this one, I brought counselors and diagnosticians up to at least 2% above a master's degree teacher. There were a few of those. It's not terribly costly, but there were a few. And then there were also a few that actually extended into assistant principal and elementary, so we bumped them a little bit higher, just to make sure that, we were hearing things like, if I go back to the classroom, I'm losing money here. I'm making less than a classroom teacher. And some of these are assistant principals or professionals that have additional certifications. And employees with above we also added additional equity adjustments. Once we improved all these pay schedules, we were actually recommending that you do additional bumps and additional pay increases to get folks' pay a little bit farther into these ranges so that they're a little bit closer to market. So employees with above median experience, we're looking at experienced folks whose pay is below the midpoint of the range, which is that market target that we use. We gave them the cost is an additional 3% of the proposed midpoint, and these are the experience factors that we use for the different jobs. We use these experience factors because that's the best data that we had. So we adjusted the pay structures. We're recommending pay increases for certain professionals, and then we're recommending additional equity adjustments for those who have been in the job for a while but whose pay is still below midpoint. The new proposed pay structures include, you'll have one for teachers, registered nurses, and librarians. You'll have 12 pay grades in administrators and professionals. You would have 6 pay grades for technology. We split them out so we can target that market a little bit, more intensely. Their career path is very different than an educator's would be. Administrative support, same story. This is all your clerical staff. They have a whole different career path. Educational aids includes all of your classroom support. And then the manual trades is your skilled and unskilled trades, from custodians and food service workers up to licensed electricians and foremen. The cost on this is a lot less than some of the numbers you are looking at earlier this evening. I was like, guys, they're going to think this is cheap. On an annual basis, this is about a $2.8 million for adjusting the cost for giving pay increases. This is annually. Now, you're going to make a mid-year adjustment. So this would be, what, 5 or 6/12 roughly. I don't have everybody's duty schedules, and I mean, I don't know exactly how many days all these folks still have on their contracts, et cetera. So I'm not able to bring that down to a more precise level, but Ms. Powell is able to, and Joseph are able to get in there and make those estimates. And so I'm not exactly sure what that final number was, but annually it's about $2.8 million. I do want to add that this has just been a delightful experience for us. I had a team down here doing interviews. Your staff is delightful. They are warm, they are open, they are honest, and we have thoroughly enjoyed working with Arlington ISD.
I'm gonna close out with a couple of thoughts here before we open this up for questions for Ann. One of our several thoughts here, I guess. I'm gonna go first to this slide. The TASB salary recommendations do several things for us. First of all, very importantly to us, they align our entire compensation structure within the market. All of our pay ranges for individual pay grades are aligned with each other and to the market, and that is extremely critical for us and puts us in a very good position to place people now as they come in, and to know that we have employees and individual jobs categorized correctly across those different pay grades. So that second bullet, align individual positions appropriately within our salary structure, is what I was referring to there. This sets our foundation for going forward with a performance-based pay system. We had to true up, if you will, the current system and get us competitive to begin with, so that going forward we can look at performance as one of the components for proposing annual salary increases. The TASB market and equity adjustment cost estimate that we just looked at, the total $2.8 million, that's an annualized estimate. We have received all of the data back, a tremendous amount of data in different worksheets, and so that is an estimate. Our task now is to complete our review of those detailed worksheets to determine that if we have any other adjustments we need to make. For example, the data file that we sent them, we sent in September. Well, we've had natural turnover since then. We have some people who are no longer with us that are on those worksheets. And so we need to go through and make sure that we have fully vetted out all the calculations in that worksheet. The next step then, the board will consider individual adjustments in TASB's report based on administration's review of that data. So we will come back at a future meeting and bring those recommendations to you all after we complete that review of all that detailed information. The other thing that we think is absolutely critical is that going forward, we continue to do this on a routine basis. I'll be honest, this is a process that this district has not done on a very regular basis. As we visit with Ann, we've learned that there are a number of large districts around the state that very routinely go through the process of doing a market analysis. Even between those studies, which might take place once every 3 years, there's work that needs to be done internally, and we will be doing that. We'll look each year at our midpoints compared to market, make sure that our structure is still staying aligned within the overall salary schedule and also to market. I have to say a couple of things before we turn this over for questions. First of all, I want to thank Scott. I mean, Scott's walked in right on the tail end of this process, and he knows an awful lot about our pay schedules now after about 3 weeks on the job, and he's been a tremendous help to us in digesting this information and asking questions, and and moving this towards the completed report. And then finally, Joe Hanlon, our payroll supervisor, has done a tremendous amount of work on this project. You cannot believe we talked earlier about capital needs and all the data that came with the facility assessment. There's an enormous amount of data that we have been reviewing as part of this study. And so Joe has spent hours on this and has done a tremendous job. And I am very grateful for his expertise and his eye on this. So with that, we'll, I think, maybe move back to Ann's PowerPoint and then open it up for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Powell. This time, do my colleagues have questions? Mr. Hibbs.
Thank you very much for your presentation. When I'm looking at the different comparisons, like campus leadership, one of the areas that it looks like that we were not competitive would be at the assistant principals at elementaries. Is that what, and that would be one that would stand out? Mm-hmm. I'm reading that right. Yeah, we would be under the average comparison for the local and the large districts, correct?
Yes, at the local, it looks like you were at 98%. And then the large districts, we have lots of charts here. Assistant principals at elementary, you were at 94%.
Okay.
For the large district. So you were slightly below.
But
keep in mind too that that's any multiple incumbent job is an average of all the incumbents in there.
Right. Okay. How about was one of our blaring areas with the counselors? I heard you refer back to the counselors several times. Was that one of the areas that we seem to be under the market?
Well, the problem with the counselors, and I'm going to find the detailed data here in just a second. The problem with the counselors, I mean, if you just look overall on an annual basis, I mean, the overall doesn't look too bad because you've got some counselors that have been there. The incumbent pay isn't all necessarily bad for everybody. You have some people who have been here a very, very long time, so the average looks pretty good. But what you've got is some folks that are below what a classroom teacher would be making. And the schedule that you're publishing right now, when you break it down on a daily rate basis compared to a master's degree teacher schedule, it is below, they're lower, and it's a little slightly regressive as well. So not every counselor, and I guess we probably need to clarify, not every counselor is going to get a great big pay increase. What we're looking at is some folks that have high experience that are low to the midpoint would get a bump, and then we did a second check for them to make sure that they're at least above a master's degree teacher. So some counselors who've been with you for a long time, and they're paid fine. And I guess that's across the board. Not everybody's getting a great big pay increase. We need to manage expectations here. We targeted people who've been in the job for a long time and that are below midpoint, and then the counselors and some of the other professionals, diagnosticians, even some assistant principals at the elementary school, we targeted them to make sure that their daily rate was above teachers.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much.
Ms. Patton, let me ask you a quick question. So when we have positions that require master's degrees, is a stipend still given for those degrees?
Well, the stipend, you're giving a stipend you're giving stipends for like a teacher with a master's degree. That stipend, that's that $1,300.
But you're not required to have a master's
But you're not required to have a master's degree. So if you have a master's degree, if your job requires a master's degree, you're not paying a stipend.
So like our principals, our counselors.
They're not getting a master's degree stipend. It's a minimum requirement for their job.
So we're building that, and my point of going to that is we're building that into the range, which is what we should be doing. Because
in those cases, yes, but in the
Okay.
other cases that they were not.
Right.
Now they're recommending they are built. In the, was it auxiliary or what?
Yes, you were paying some stipends for that, and that we're just roll everything into their pay. That practice is not working for you, and I specifically asked, is it helping? And they're like, no, because the pay's too low.
Right.
So roll everything into their pay. No one lost money. No one had money taken away from them. And then just go forward in in a much higher pay structure. We raised those pay structures much, much higher than they were before.
Okay, thank you, and that's a piece. Scott, I got a question or two for you. As our new head of HR, you see those numbers coming up of, we're going to have to recruit almost 10% of our teachers at a very much retirement range. That's an alarming number.
Sure.
It's a large part of our workforce and teacher workforce. So there's some major concern over how we get this. Do you think this range and these programs we're taking it to, does it take us to the vision where you see our compensation going?
I think that question's spot on, and I think that the answer is absolutely yes on a couple topics. First of all, I think that when you remember the pie chart that was included, and it showed the percentage of teachers that were new teachers, the 0 to 3 years versus the experienced recruits, you could infer from that data that we're pulling people out of school, but we're not being very effective at pulling people from other districts. And what a good problem it would be to have a pay range that gave you the flexibility to hire the experienced teachers at the right rates and be competitive to market, so you knew you could recruit the best science, the best math teachers, et cetera. So I think it starts off by giving you that competitive advantage to ease out that pie chart a little bit, so it's more of a 50-50 versus a 75-25. I also think that it puts us in a position in terms of this overall philosophy. It was mentioned pay for performance in general, that it gives us the opportunity to have a breadth, so that the foundation of pay for performance by definition is that you're market competitive, and then you're able to differentiate within that range with a tolerance of maybe 15 to 20% below and 15 to 20% above that midpoint or that market average to incentivize performance and reward performance accordingly. I think it's absolutely the right way to go.
Perfect. Thank you, Scott. That's a great piece. And on that, I think looking at this, I think we have to make sure our counselors' duties are growing more and more. I think what we've seen the state put through, they have more and more counseling responsibility, and I think as a board, we see what we're paying our counselors. We have to be competitive on our counselors, and more importantly, we have to make sure our counselors are counseling and not doing some of the work, I think, and historically they have had to do from a test, thank you, Ms. Solons, from a testing process, because we are asking a lot for all of our students to be on plans, to review plans, and those are things that counselors must review. And so I think from a board's perspective, I see lots of heads nodding. We've got to make sure those things are going, and I know Dr. Fassos has the same feelings from that. So I just want to reassure, because looking at this, we have a lot of counselors that stuck with us a long time, and that's a good thing. But also, we still always have to recruit. There's always, no matter who it is, what position, we're always having to replace, no matter what position. And Scott knows that from a recruitment and talent standpoint. We can build all the buildings we want. Those are nice. This is probably more important than anything else we do. You have the right teacher and right person in a classroom, and things go well. Mr. Pompa.
Ms. Patton, I think you are saying about the same thing that everybody that gets to work with our staff says, and that's the fact that we really have fantastic staff, very dedicated individuals that put way more than the typical 40-hour-a-week work. And I see Tony with a big smile on his face, and so we are proud of our staff. I think as we've started the process a couple of years ago when we began our strategic plan development of saying we want to be a world-class school district, and we knew that we had to have good people to get there. And this is part of that we have to be competitive to be able to take the very best when we hire them, and then to be able to retain them once we bring them on. And we've been talking about, fundamental business principles and recognizing those and adapting those in how we manage the school district. And I think this is part of it. And, hearing from Scott words like pay for performance, market driven, that's exactly how the business world runs. And I think that they've demonstrated that it does deliver good results. And we're not going to run the school district just like a business because we can't, but there are some fundamental business principles that we can adapt that will help us manage this district better. And I think this is one of those. And I just do want to take a moment, if you don't mind, Mr. Hogg, to thank Ms. Powell, Tony Drollinger, Scott, of course, Ms. Patton, Jamie Sullins, and Peter Barron, because we sat back in that room in a committee meeting probably for, I don't know if it was a 4 or 5 hour meeting, delving through all this and very healthy discussions about how we wanted to structure this this presentation for our board. I do want to clarify one thing, that we don't want to assume anything. We're not assuming that we're going to do a mid-year pay raise. That's up to this board to decide what we want to do. So I don't want anybody out there to get the misconception, hey, it's already built in. Yeah, don't go spend the raise yet. Just hold on to the board.
Yeah, managing expectations is
I want to
really
clarify
important.
that. I'm sorry, Joe, and Joe was in there, of course. On top of all the hours that he did putting all this work together, he was also in there working with us, so apologize, Joe. If we are ready for a motion, I have a motion to be made unless somebody else has any more comments.
If you'd wait 1 second, Mr.
Absolutely.
Pompa, I think we have one more comment. Dr. Esch.
Thank you, President Hogg. I just have a question of curiosity. The slide that had the years of experience for the teachers, where we spent some time discussing the 25 plus.
That one?
Yes. With your experience, Ann, or Scott, with all of your vast 3 weeks of district experience, I would automatically expect that at some point, 10, 11 to 15 years, you would see a direct proportional linear curve up to 25 years, that it would continually build versus falling off to so low and then spike like that at 25. How can you explain that? Is that normal?
That is actually more normal than you would think. There's not a progression. In fact, I rarely see a progression that just will, spike up like that. What I see, if you look at a district that's very, very fast growing, say, I don't know, Frisco or Round Rock, you'll see a big concentration of teachers at the bottom end because they're hiring so fast and hiring in those first 10 years, and you'll see a big spike at that end. But teachers, choose different times of their career to leave, and then you've got the long timers that just stay and stay and stay.
So it
God
could
love
actually
them.
be reminiscent of our heyday, if you will, back 70s, early 80s.
I agree.
Our growth period.
If I could add one thing, actually, if you break out the histogram a little further and you continue to go in 5-year increments, you would see that it doesn't make obviously as much of a dramatic difference as you see the way it's built. Because I think what the intention of this graph is to show the risk of a retirement cliff and what that would cause. But if in fact you kept going into the 5-year increments, you'd see that curve was still pretty stable in the 30, 35 and so forth. So we were looking at the data earlier, and I think that the key message is that of those 400 teachers or so that are in that population of 25 plus, about 250 of them are actually over 31 years, and 31 years is consistent with the TASB data that says the window is open in terms of the standard retirement service for teachers. So we've got 250 teachers today that are in that window for retirement, which tells me I better get busy because we've got to be prepared versus reactive to that process.
Yeah, absolutely. Proactive is absolutely the way to go. And honestly, that's my closing statement on this. This is such great data, great information. This is so much what we wanted as part of our strategic plan, to recruit, retain, reward the best. And this is an integral piece to get that in check, in place. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Reich. Real quick, Mr. Pompa, before you go, Mr. Barrett.
Since we're looking at the big spike there, can we get a number from personnel as to how many of those folks are in the retire, rehire category? And also, at what point on the line there does the career ladder hit us?
No, career ladder, you're still seeing career ladder payments around 23, 24 years. And that's, I mean, it's been that long. So you're just about out of, you're still paying career ladder for anyone who earned it back in the day. But, and you'll see teachers with those stipends still hanging out there, but it's all after 24, around 23, 24 years.
And I don't have that data today, but I'll certainly get it for you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And I can't tell from my data whether they're retire, so.
Good points, Mr. Barron, and I agree. Scott, you see, we're trying to look at how these things go on, and if we need to eliminate, career ladder's been eliminated, or we need to determine what stipend should be there, should not be there. Of course, if someone's earning a stipend now, they should still receive that as it grandfathers out to an extent on those, but any new ones that come in, we can evaluate those and determine, are they the best fit, or we just build it into the normal pay of what's going on. That's a determination, because sometimes you look at that and that pay range gives us, someone may have been working as an actuary and really knows math, or teaching at a college level, and they don't have that teaching experience, but they still have some experience that's worthwhile, and that's where that pay range takes us. So I appreciate this info coming in. Mr. Pompa.
And that was one of the good things that they brought back that there was a lot of good things, but one of the things that was interesting to me that they identified that some of what we were doing really wasn't effective in achieving the goals that we were going after, and then the recommendation of, or not the recommendation, but the clarification that some districts are doing stipends specifically for a master's in the subject that you teach, because and I think we're seeing that actually does deliver better results than just if you're a math teacher and you have a master's in, you know,
Basket weaving.
Basket weaving or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard stories about people that have master's degrees in theology, but, you know, if you're teaching, you know, second grade, I don't know that the theology degree is, you know, all that valuable. So.
And that's a great point. And again, clarifying that we're not going to reduce anybody's pay.
No.
We're just going to restructure it and make sure that when we're paying a stipend, it's actually delivering the result that we're looking for. So I was just thinking there was a lot of teachers, you know, 25 years and over, just because they love us and they don't want to leave the district.
That's what I
mean,
think.
it's just such a fantastic district to work in. Okay, well, I do have
that's probably true.
a motion in, it is coming from our committee. I move that the board direct the administration to recommend to the board at a future meeting salary adjustments necessary to reflect market in accordance with TASB salary market analysis.
Thank you, Mr. Pompa. We have a motion coming from committee. No seconds required. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. 6 trustees present, 6 trustees voting in the affirmative. We will bring this back as staff finishes up some of the work on this so we can look at final numbers. That is all the discussion action items we have this night. Mr. Secretary, do we have any items to consider this evening?
The only thing going forward was the request from Mr. Barron about the retiree hire numbers from Mr. Kale.
Great point. Thank you, Dr. Reich. Mr. Barron?
Plus the 2 things we voted on.
Of course. Those are voted on, so we know those are coming back. That's a given, Mr. Barron. With that, it is 9:45 p.m. We will adjourn, not be going into closed session, and feel free next Thursday to come back and see us. We'll be here this February 6th. Thank you.